Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for choosing to hear about my honors thesis research with the psychology department here at Meredith College. My name is Emily Mitchum, and I studied the influence of studying abroad on student self-concept. I studied abroad in the fall of 2017 with the Meredith in Italy program and found that aspects of my personality had grown in confidence from before and after my study abroad experience. With this in mind, I conducted a repeated measure study with the between subjects factor, comparing the total change of undergraduate self-concept between cohorts of study abroad students. To supplement my research, I studied the works of various researchers on study abroad and self-concept. Carly and Tudor used an independent groups design to study learning outcomes and perception in study abroad students. The purpose of the study was to determine if perspectives on the host country changed from pre-trip to post-trip in participants, and included a control group of non-traveling students' perspectives. Participants were 41 undergraduate study abroad students whose perspectives on the host country were examined using a semantic differential scale assessment, both prior to and shortly after participation in a 2-week study trip to Mexico. Carly and Tudor found that experiences abroad significantly influenced participant perspectives on the host country. Analyses revealed significant differences in the perceptions of the two groups, but no significant difference between the pre-trip and control groups' perceptions of the host country. Bios used a 2x2x2 factorial design to assess the impact of study abroad on student perceptions of self-efficacy or personal skill level. The purpose of the study was to test if engagement in cultural activities abroad resulted in self-efficacy gains for language subskills specifically. The researchers tested 4 questions concerning foreign language acquisition: the impact of length of stay in study abroad programs, uniformity of the impact across language skills, and the role of cultural engagement on self-efficacy perceptions. Participants were 47 undergraduate students divided into 2 cohorts based on length of program. One cohort attended a 5-week program and the other attended a semester-long program. These were additionally subdivided into smaller cohorts for statistical analysis by language of exposure, French or Spanish, and by courses offered, 2nd or 3rd year level courses. All participants were administered the same 20-question assessment concerning the research question topics both before and after the abroad program. Kubius and Aventa's results indicated that gains in self-efficacy followed the participants' time abroad. For reading gain, the pre-abroad measure was negative and significant at less than 0.05, indicating that participants who scored high in the reading self-efficacy scale before studying abroad tended to have lower gains over the course of the term of study. The coefficient for French language was not significant, indicating that there were no differences in the gain between Spanish and French students. The length of program was significant at less than 0.05, and the coefficient was positive, indicating that participants who stayed in the country for a longer period of time tended to have higher gains in self-efficacy. Angelo used an independent groups design to study change in personality in spring and fall semester students studying abroad compared to a control group of on-campus students. The research addressed which personal variables predict change in identity, beliefs, and feelings during study abroad and if change was experienced. 132 participants completed questionnaires at 2 weeks, 8 weeks, and 12 weeks, and assessed personality change using the 10-item personality inventory. On a 7-point Likert scale, participants indicated agreement with changes. The satisfaction with life scale measured participants' general impressions of life. Participants used a 7-point Likert scale and reported levels of satisfaction with the program itself. Taffarati and Swan's scale measurement of self-esteem was also used. This 16-item scale measures 2 dimensions of self-esteem, self-liking, and self-competence. Satisfaction with life, worldliness, self-esteem, and ethnocentrism were assessed before participants left the United States, and again after participants had been abroad for 12 weeks. Angelo's results suggested that personal change, self-confidence, and satisfaction with life were significantly different from the control group at less than 0.05. Participants abroad had higher satisfaction with life, self-competence, and overall personal change. The purpose of the present study was to understand the influence of studying abroad on self-concept by examining the unique effects of 4 study abroad cohorts: semester versus summer term length, and Meredith-supported versus affiliate-supported program types. The study focused on 3 hypotheses. The first predicted that the amount of change in self-concept would be greater for those enrolled in longer spring term programs than for those enrolled in shorter summer term programs. The second predicted that the amount of change in self-concept would be greater for those enrolled in Meredith College programs over those enrolled in affiliated programs. The third predicted that the social self-concept score, known as SOC, would experience the most positive change across all participants compared to the total self-concept, TOT, and conflict, CON, scores. Participants included 14 female undergraduate students enrolled at Meredith College and accepted into either Meredith or affiliate and spring term or summer term study abroad programs taking place between January and August of 2019. Participants signed consent forms, were treated in accordance with the ethical principles of psychologists and code of conduct, and were not compensated for their participation. All participants were debriefed and released following the conclusion of the study. Materials included 2 identical surveys containing questions on study abroad program type and duration, participant age, major, graduating class, and ethnicity, as well as the 1995 version of the Tennessee Self-Concept Scale developed by William H. Fitz. Participants were also required to have a laptop to complete both surveys and pencils for in-person completions of the scale. Participants signed consent forms, completed 1 survey within 2 weeks of departure, and completed a second survey within 2 weeks of return. This survey was distributed in person by the researcher and electronically for those unable to meet in person. 3 subscores out of the 15 present in the scale were analyzed for changes: the total self-concept score, which reflects the individual's overall self-concept and associated level of self-esteem; the conflict score, which compares the extent to which an individual differentiates their self-concept by assertion through positive items, by agreeing, focusing on who you are, or by negation through disagreement with negative items, who you are not; and the social self-concept score is a measure of how the self is perceived in relation to others, reflecting a general understanding of adequacy in social interaction. The study found 2 significant relationships by score for total and social self-concept at p is less than 0.05, but none between cohorts. The study also found that these differences in amount of change were greatest when comparing by term of study, short versus long, rather than by type of program. The Tennessee Self-Concept Scale has a mean score of 50 with a standard deviation of 10, so participants scoring below 50 had a below average self-concept, while those who scored above had an above average self-concept. Below 20 is extremely rare and above 70 is extremely rare. This scale goes from about 20 to 80. You can see everyone's relative t-scores in the graph. This slide visualizes the before and after scores for the total self-concept results only for each cohort. As you can see, the greatest amount of positive change was found amongst spring semester participants compared to all other groups. Note how much lower the starting score is for spring semester participants compared to the other groups. This slide visualizes the before and after scores for the conflict score. This score is one in which decrease indicates a more stable self-concept, so you'll be looking at it differently than the total scale. This score showed much greater change across most groups and much higher variability. For this score, the Meredith program type group experienced the greatest change, or growth in stability of asserting their identity. Note how summer and affiliate groups tended to grow in asserting what they are not, rather than what they are. In terms of increase and decrease, they increased in their conflict score, whereas semester and Meredith program students decreased in their conflict score. It remains unclear what may have caused this difference, but I speculate that Meredith support or amount of time of support can have something to do with being able to assert who you are over who you are not, but that remains unknown. This slide visualizes before and after scores for the social self-concept results for each cohort. As you can see, there were very similar amounts of change between group pairings. Semester and summer students experienced similar amounts of growth, though in different directions, and there was very little difference between program type groups. Note again the lower starting score of spring participants and trend towards decline in summer participants. Social skills were obviously much more improved in semester students than summer. Pairwise comparisons showed that there was a significant change across all participants for total and social self-concept change, with p at less than 0.05. This indicates that studying abroad boosts student self-concept and may aid in development of social skills and confidence. This is especially exciting due to the small sample size in this study. These results, both significant and not, indicate that semester participants had greater changes in self-concept across all 3 subscores, supporting the first hypothesis that change would be greater for those who studied abroad longer. Meredith students also experienced greater positive change than affiliate students by way of their changes in conflict score, supporting the second hypothesis. The third hypothesis was not supported because there was little difference in amounts of change between groups for the social self-concept. Carley and Tudor's 2006 study on student perception of host countries concluded that participants who studied abroad experienced significant change in their perspective on host countries over the course of their term. The present study does not support these findings because perception on host country was not studied. However, the pre-trip, post-trip model of the two studies were similar. Cubillos and Olvento's 2013 study on student perception of self-efficacy concluded that participants who studied abroad experienced significant change in their perspective on their own skill levels and personality over the course of their term abroad, and that the longer the term lasted, the more the students improved in skill. The present study supports these findings because it concluded that change in personality and self-concept over the course of a term abroad occurred for every student and were significant for students traveling for longer terms compared to shorter terms. Angelo's 2008 study on personality, change over the course of a semester in study abroad students, concluded that study abroad participants experienced greater positive change in personality than the control group. The present study does not support these findings because only students within study abroad programs were compared, and no control group was included. Some limitations of the present study included small sample size, diminishing my ability to generalize the findings to a larger population. Based on the trends in the data, a larger sample size would have yielded significant results for more subscores. There was also potential for many confounding variables to interfere with the development of participant self-concept over time, including gender, ethnicity, country of program, age, and past travel experience, although students who had studied abroad in the past were excluded from the study. Limited diversity also reduces the generalizability of the study. Lastly, the reliability of the chosen self-concept scale could be called into question, as it has had difficulty withstanding reliability tests in recent years, though I did do careful calculation using all of the reliability measures contained within the scale. In future research, I would act against these limitations by expanding the sample size and recruiting from multiple colleges and universities, as well as other tests of significance would be added for other elements of the participants' program and personal backgrounds. This would limit confounding variable interaction. I would also consider using other scales to score self-concept to increase reliability and take qualitative data via journaling or interview to expand my understanding of changes in participants. These are my references. And please reach out to me with any questions at the email address below. Thank you for your time and attention.